Good evening and good morning to all esteemed guests who have joined today from across the globe. Today is being a special day in India. That's today we celebrate National Science Day, where we celebrate the great discovery made by Dr. C.V. Raman, that popularly known as the Raman effect. That great invention or discovery has led to many technical innovations, which has impacted the society in large. We are not really sure that knowingly or unknowingly, but it has touched each and every person in large in society. And today, the special guest lecture is by none other than Mr. R Gopalakrishnan, who is going to talk on innovations and leadership in general. So I, Shailendra Vashne, on my personal behalf, as well as on behalf of Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership at IIT Kharagpur, welcome you all. Just to give you a brief an idea about the academy was inaugurated in December 2021. That's just a few months back. And prior to that, there have been few precursors in form of LEAP programs at IIT Kharagpur. The academy has been founded by our illustrious and distinguished alumni, Professor Partha Ghosh. So to give you a very brief, in a nutshell, I would say that the mission of this academy is to train and inculcate the leadership traits, not only at the young minds at student level, but at various professional levels by infusing the Western and Eastern, including Vedic philosophies. With these words, I would like to invite Professor Amit Patra, Professor of Department of Electrical Engineering and the Deputy Director of the Institute, IIT Kharagpur, to share his thoughts. Professor Amit Patra.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Vashne, and once again, good evening and good morning to wherever you are. And so it's my pleasure to greet you all on this occasion. And this is the second lecture on this series. And in fact, we're very, very excited to see how this leadership school academy, how it proceeds. From now, I think it's a challenging track. And we are still not, we have not really made up our mind, especially regarding the academic program and the various lectures and other events that we are going to have. But it's all exciting, especially for our young students. In fact, and ultimately they will have to be the leaders of tomorrow. So they are the ones, if we can inspire them, and then I think we'll be able to, at a very, very high level, that we can say that we will be able to do justice to the creation of the academy. But at a more, tactical level, I think we have to decide on, firstly, I also need to understand what exactly we mean by leadership. In fact, about a decade back, a little bit more than a decade back, we started the School of Entrepreneurship. And so we had to first educate ourselves that what is this entrepreneurship and can it be really taught? Because we thought it sort of comes from within. And if it doesn't come from within, nothing happens. And just like we say that for success of any venture, it is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So if we can identify what is the area we can perspire on, and then we can wait for the luck, to get that spark or that inspiration. And then I think then we are done. And as you all know that in any ventures, only 1 or 2 out of 10 really make it to that level. Similarly, I think, again, getting my own thoughts and just based on experience, I'm not really a management trained person, but, leadership is again something which, in my opinion, is more like, being proactive about something. You will have lots of challenges when we, live in our world, whether it's technical world or social world or, COVID world, whatever, all these challenges come our way, and we have to be innovative in our solution. And so basically there is a distinction between the leader and the follower, right? Unfortunately, most of us are trained to be followers, especially in a country like India, where people are traditionally they are sort of the very, very obeying type of people. We train our kids not to ask questions, not to especially ask question their elders, sort of, so your boss tells you something, your parents tell you something, your teachers tell you something, you were supposed to, very docilely, in a docile fashion, you are supposed to follow the orders, right? So that actually is a kind of anti-leader, I believe, that kind of environment. Unfortunately, we are doing something about it now with our NEP, National Education Policy 2020. We think we have made we are going to try to make a break from there, and we hopefully will be able to inculcate the spirit of inquiry, spirit of questioning things, and especially the kind of attitude that is required for scientific research, technological research, and of course, even any type of research that way. Main spirit of research is asking questions for which answers don't exist yet. So I feel, so we will probably have to understand what is leadership, and also, whatever maybe because of my own upbringing, I always felt that leadership is something which is really very elusive. You are not, you cannot really, you should not really consider yourself as a leader in the sense that sort of, you can say that it's synonymous with a great success. Like, we say that the managing director, if you become a managing director of a company, or let us say the vice chancellor of a university, then you are a leader. But I think we'll have to understand the basics a little bit more. And, and I think our speech today from Gopal, I'll also eager to hear what he says, whatever little bit of management I have learned from his books. And so I look forward to his talk. And so I feel that, leadership, I think it will come out is that, something, you look at the world around you and you feel that something is not right and you want to set it right. So that is leadership. Leadership is not being successful in the, monetary fashion, or, in terms of achieving a so-called leadership position, but in, fighting for a cause and fighting it passionately until you win. So I may or may not be right. I just told whatever came to my mind, but I really look forward to that session today and also the future sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your sharing your thoughts. Now I would like to request Professor Joysen to introduce Professor Partha Ghosh and Professor Joysen.
And I was really impressed by the kind words of our Deputy Director, Professor Amit Patra, and he was very humbly saying that he really is not clear about what exactly is leadership, but I think he's very clear in about what he was saying. Someone who is fighting with passion, and it's not caring about the defeats and the win, and it's on, and he's sustained in the path of progress, and someday he wins, obviously and eventually, and at the end of the day, and that day he's identified as a sustained leader. So that was really beautiful, and I was enjoying those statements. That was from his heart. So when someone speaks from the heart, you lead the way, and I think there's one example who stands in front of us. That's Partha, the alumnus, Partha Ghosh, distinguished alumnus, illustrious alumnus, life fellow alumnus, a person who has contributed his heart and soul to IIT Kharagpur, and he leads the mind of many around the world, from the US to Australia to Japan to India. And right now he's with us, trying to inspire and carve out a niche of leadership within IIT Kharagpur. So personally, I like him for many reasons. I'm going to say why. But he's really world-renowned as a thought leader. And he's just not a thought leader, he's also a problem solver. He solves problem. And he's just not doing that, he's also a futurist. He's hopeful. He looks into the future. And he does not stop there also. He's also an inspirer in the field of business and technology. And he also does not end there. And that's where Partha Ghosh is excellent. He's a man of the heart. I think his heart proceeds much ahead of his brain. That's what I've found so unique in this person. And that gives him a wide range of interests, from arts to science, from philosophy to philanthropy, from business to economics. And I think from the rare combination of the most ancient and the most modern. And I think within the fold of his two hands, and the two sides of the heart. He likes to combine the best of the East with the best of the West, and that's why he's very close to the idols of Swami Vivekananda. That is why he's very close to the idols of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and he's very close to the idols of Mahatma Gandhiji and Sarvepalli Dr. Radhakrishnan, and on, because every leader in the world has these properties, very open mind and very integral and very assimilative. And the name of the game is assimilation. So Partha is a man of assimilation. He's known as a modern day Renaissance man. Yes, he is. And over 4 decades, as a strategist, as a true global citizen, as a former partner of McKinsey and Company, and a leader of his own firm, which is Partha S. Ghosh and Associates, he has served various positions as the head of businesses, heads of multinationals, steering governments, giving them a light of hope on strategic accesses and significant moves and organizational issues. And his walks and his journey has treaded about more than 30 countries across 5 continents. That's really amazing. And what I personally like Partha, because I have a weakness there, and the weakness has a lot of science in it, because Partha has a lovely combination of the best of the West in terms of American leadership and the best of Oriental leadership, which is just not India, but it's also Japan. And I find a lot of sense and a lot of significance there. And at the end of the day, Partha is a wonderful teacher and a very good speaker, a very good friend in the class. He can steer your mind, he can slowly win you off with his lovely words. And that's why he's a professor of practice at Tufts University, and especially the highest Ivy League, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That's New Cambridge, just on the other side of Charles River, an institute where everybody likes to have a little treading, and Partha treads there, talks there, meets people, inspires people. So today here he is. He's inspiring us through his wonderful ranges of knowledge, cross-cutting economics, globalization, innovation, leadership, problem solving, strategy making, and most important of all, winning others to the path of love, to the love path of concern, and to the path of heart. So it's really amazing that in my faggot career at IIT Kharagpur, I meet someone like Partha and get a chance to see the world through a window that he has seen for the last 4 decades. So we are very sure that under the able leadership of our director, Professor Tiwari, our deputy director, Professor Partha, will definitely augment a process which has already been inspired, and it's put into action by Partha, the alumnus Partha S. Ghosh. So thank you so much, Partha, to be a part of this. And we like to hear some initial words from you before we go to our key lecture by one of the most illustrious managers who has managed this country so well. And everybody knows him, but he comes after you. It's over to Partha. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy. I don't know where to begin. It has been so kind of you to share your words on me. I'm very humble. I'm still a student of life, still trying to explore the unknown with a very open heart, if you will. But you did say something very important, that my heart comes before my brain, because I have a limited brain. But the heart helps me to connect with a lot of possibilities. So thank you very much, Joy. Professor Partha, thank you for your leadership. I think you summarized what is leadership extremely well. It is fuzzy, but it could be developed, and that's why we have the academy. Thanks to Chairman of the Academy, Professor Vashni, Professor Trilok Singh, and many personalities, specifically Commander Jaitley, in the spirit of military discipline, he have commanded the development of the academy thus far extremely well, with a kind heart, which I think we should also look up to as we develop the personality of the academy. Hearty welcome to Gopal for offering your time and wisdom in gracing the second international lecture series of the academy at a very critical moment in history, for the world and the Indian subcontinent. Just to set up the backdrop of today's talk, I will touch on a few points. First, there's no doubt that we are in a time zone in the evolution of our civilization where the challenges that we are faced with today are becoming increasingly complex and vicious, and unintended consequences are becoming so regular. I often wonder, when we call them unintended, whether it reflects our inability to develop in our inner conscience the capacity to sense signals, most often when weak and less visible, before they become big, with a holistic and immersive perspective. That is the challenge today. We are failing, and we call them unintended consequences after things happen. And more importantly, even when they are visible and strong, loud and clear, our ability to understand, process them seem to be also limited. As a result, we always get into unwelcome situations at a pretty regular intervals. Like what we are observing right now in Ukraine, the continuing turmoil in the Middle East for the last 5 decades or more. And of course, since the Industrial Revolution, we have continued to hurt the nature, a la climate change, let alone the major wars of the 20th century, let alone what happened in 9/11, let alone the accidents in Fukushima, and let alone, particularly visible in our country, the increasing gap between rich and poor. Together, they underscore one point, and only one point. There's a very serious deficit of leadership. Our leadership is on the line. We need to reset. So, second point, that is why we have the Leadership Academy. Professor Varshney, Professor Partha, then Professor Joyson touched on it from multiple angles, but I feel it is my moral and professional responsibility to humbly offer you what we see as the role of this academy. It's very important, and it is very timely because the world is looking for new type of leadership. The country, the Indian subcontinent with 1.85 billion people, including Pakistan and Bangladesh, is looking for leadership. So what is leadership? What is our purpose? It is to ensure the future scientists and technologists, engineers as problem solvers, corporate executive, government officers could shape a world that could truly tap into the infinite power of imagination. Mark my word, infinite power of imagination to repurpose the finite, rapidly depleting resources of our planet in a more equitable and sustainable fashion. And who can do that? It is the scientists and engineers that we are graduating. So leadership, education has to be embedded. Professor Partha was right when he said he doesn't understand, because he understands it very well. Because it is true, leadership is mysterious as it is fuzzy. It is complex alchemy of image, actions, and decision. Often sounds like a sacred reserved for a few, but it is true. Mother Teresa was as much as a leader as was Swami Vivekananda. They express themselves in different ways. But what I believe, based on my 40 years of experience of working with leaders as a student in close to 36 nations from east to west, north to south, I have to come to believe leadership is a human fine art that uncovers inner courage and a science of self-realization that guides the force of self-expression of individuals, of an organization, of a society towards a higher level purpose. And that's what we want to bring out. Indeed, in the words of JFK, which I often quote, it is the courage to wage a silent battle to illuminate the nature of man and the world he lives. That is leadership. And only to serve, why? Our own awakening. There again, I will quote Swami Vivekananda, who talks, our real awakening takes place when we dedicate our life towards an exalted ideal. So it is about dedication. And it is our hope the Academy of Leadership, under the guidance of Commander, another illustrious alumni, Krishan Khanna, Gopal, and many others. I mean, all of you, I put on Dang, and of course, the leadership at IIT Kharagpur. We develop the leadership towards this purpose so that indeed we can build a great nation, build a great South Asia, and most importantly, enlighten the civilization. Because the world from Korea, North Korea, South China Sea, all the way to the gridlocks in the United States, we have serious problems. We need enlightenment. And fortunately, in the Indian philosophical ethos, there are a lot of gems that we have to uncover and bring to play. So if that spirit is clear, we need to step up our innovation capacity along multiple dimensions. And I'm glad my friend, Gopal has been a friend of mine since he was the GSEC in IIT Kharagpur. That was 1966-67 when I came to IIT. And that's 50 years of relation. Looking forward to his wisdom, because he, as you know, has played leadership roles across many countries, from Saudi Arabia to various parts of the world and India. And not only that, he has done that in a very humble fashion. I'm very impressed with his knowledge of Bengali. So he gives me a chance to practice Bengali whenever he meets me, even in his emails. So I think he connects with people like Tagore and Vivekananda perhaps more than most of the Bengalis could. So in that spirit, I think what he will talk about innovation is something which would definitely advance the promise of the Academy of Leadership at IIT Kharagpur. So Gopal, I want to personally thank you very much. You are a great friend, and we will keep drawing you into different conferences and different lectures as you continue to develop yourself as a leader, because that is a continuous search for excellence. So thank you, and pass it back to Commander Jaitley to introduce Gopal in a more formal fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Partha. I think everybody is waiting to hear our R Gopalakrishnan. A great leader, 55 years of corporate experience, 34 years of board experience, more than 1,000 keynote addresses, not only in India, all over the world. Author of 17 books. Wow, not a small joke. And he appears on the newspaper articles, and he's a management writer. And of course, he is an IIT Kharagpur, my senior from my department, and a VP, which is the highest student position which anybody can acquire in IIT Kharagpur. And then before coming to IIT Kharagpur, he did his physics from St. Xavier's, Kolkata. And so did I. But Hansraj College, Delhi, physics honors 1 year. And then landed at Kharagpur, electronics. He became VP, I also became VP later on, much later. So I've got some things, and I have been admiring him a lot since I met him first time. वो कहते हैं love at first sight, so respect at first sight. So this was the respect at first sight when I met him. He's so simple, down to earth, gets connected very well, as just Partha mentioned it. So Gopal is one person whom, if you meet once, you will be very, very friendly with him. He has been, on the various positions. He served in Jeddah as chairman of Unilever Arabia. He was with Tata's in Bangalore as managing director of Brook Bond Lipton and vice chairman of Hindustan Liver, director of Tata Sons. And apart from serving as director on the Tata parent board, Tata Sons, he serves as an independent director and non-executive chairman of Castrol India, and also as an independent director of PTI, Press Trust of India. So Gopal keeps mentoring a lot of startups, and he's actually engaged in both instructional activities, authoring, of course, and then even teaching. So he tells his friends, hey guys, I'm into waste. And what is his waste? Any guesses? He jokes with them that W is, of course, writing, A is advising, S is speaking, and T is teaching. And the last E I am adding from my side, he guides the entrepreneurs. So Gopal, without wasting any moment, I request you to please take on.
I feel very honored that you all sort of said such nice things about me. If you had given me a little notice, I would have told my wife to join so that she can listen to how well you think of me. And that will sort of add a lot of value to my married life. But anyway, husbands have the unique ability to get praise when their wives are not there. And I'm probably joining them. But really, on a more serious note, I've been asked to speak on the subject of exploring dimensions of innovation. Exploring dimensions of innovation, expressing leadership from within. So, it's a double pleasure for me to speak at this. First, IIT Kharagpur is my beloved alma mater, which shaped me and taught me whatever little I've learned in life. And Partha is a very distinguished fellow alum of this institute, belonging to this approximately 1960s generation of students. So in my humble view, this is a double engine. There are other things described as double engine, but for me, this is a double engine. My topic today concerns the dimensions of innovation and leadership. Now, innovation and leadership are interconnected. You know, much like oxygen is interconnected with lungs. There's no point breathing oxygen if you don't have lungs. And if you don't have a lung, the oxygen is not of much use. And innovation demands leadership, and leadership demands
Innovation.
and the third last double engine, which I've identified, that both of them, innovation and leadership, have roots within a person. Though it is influenced by external stimuli. And there are very strong social, cultural, psychological roots visible, for example, in the way India innovates as compared to some Occidental societies. So the Partha Ghosh Academy for Leadership seeks to combine the relevant parts, of positives from both Indian and Western wisdom. And as the Institute develops distinctive pedagogy and propagates ideas on innovation and leadership, I think this is a very important part. Already this evening, people have referred to Vedanta and Upanishads and classical tradition. Let me take another example just to show how Indian classical music and Western classical music are seemingly different, and yet there are similarities. Let's take a classical Western orchestra. All of us have listened to Western orchestra. Both of these schools of music, classical music, are creative, they are rich, and they're enduring. In the Western classical music, the orchestra includes many artists, as many as 100. And these people are highly focused on their specialty. They are directed by the score sheet and are beholden to the conductor. You know, if you see them coming on the stage, there is a visible discipline. I've rarely seen artists who are smiling at you or waving at you. Conductor may, because he's the hero. So serious looking artists walk onto the stage, take their allotted positions with great discipline, and then they adjust the score sheet in front of them, and then they wait for the conductor to come. And there is drama in the way the conductor comes. And the drama and panache that he describes, accompanied often by applause of the audience. During the performance, the audience is not expected to show its appreciation whenever they feel like. There are sort of well understood interregnums in the orchestra when people can clap. And if a person claps at the wrong time, he or she will get a nudge from a cognoscenti sitting somewhere close by. So there is a great deal of creativity and discipline. The outer layer is discipline, the inner layer is creativity. That there is creativity cannot be disputed. That there is discipline cannot be disputed because you're seeing it all the time. Now look at an Indian classical music. Firstly, you don't have 100 people. 4, 5, 6. I'm not talking of Bollywood, I'm talking of classical music. And these 4, 5 people are much smaller in number. They take the stage with a gait of humility and friendliness. They're smiling at you. They're wearing their dhoti or their lungi or their kurta pajama, whatever. There is no score sheet and there is no conductor, right? They just sort of get cracking. So it seems to the layperson. I mean, they have their own invisible discipline. Let's not forget that. As they play, they seem to be talking to each other and they challenge one another. What lay people call sawal, jawab and all that stuff. They seem to be improvising. One person does this and the other person says that to reply, you know. And they are all enjoying themselves. And the showmanship is passed from one artist to the other. The vocalist will let the violinist have his show. The violinist will tell the mridangam fellow to have his show, and so on and so forth. And above all, the audience, which is enjoying the show, is free to clap whenever they feel like and to utter whichever words they like. Wah, wah, wah. Bahut khoob. You will never see this happening in a Western orchestra. And the fact of the matter is, both of these schools of music, classical music, produce fantastic music. Both have the same ingredients, creativity and discipline. But like they teach you in emulsion chemistry, one has inside, the other one has discipline inside, but creativity outside. And you know that emulsions where you reverse it, fat in oil or oil in fat, can behave quite differently and have different effects. This is not a theoretical idea. I learned this when I joined Unilever. I grew up in India all my life, and then I joined a Western origin company, Unilever. And they had a management style which was quite different from whatever little I knew at that time. And gradually I adapted to their ways of working. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived there 31 years. So Partha did the same thing. I mean, you know, he also grew up in a very Indian environment. Then he joined McKinsey, which has a very American Anglo-Saxon way of working. So the essence of innovation and leadership. I'm not saying Partha and I are exemplars, but I would certainly say that we tried, and we would encourage future leaders to try to adopt the best of Western and Indian tradition. And that's what PGAL is all about. And I want to take one more example to show that this is not a pedantic thing. You know, in Indian tradition, you deprecate conformity without conviction. For example, even the Lord Buddha said, listen to my sermon, but don't accept it just because I said so. Think about it. Debate it amongst yourselves. Debate it here in the Sabha where you're sitting. And if you don't agree, that's fine. But if you do agree, then you become a part of the Goshti, you know, the tribe. You know that Shankaracharya and Ramanuja exemplified the technique of Tarka and Vitark. So debate is something that, unlike some of the Abrahamic religions, where there is no such email here, there is no tablet. And that's why Indians are so noisy. I mean, Amartya Sen called them the argumentative Indian. Although Amit Patra said we are very docile people, that's not necessarily the case. The noisiest democracy in the world is India. We are docile when it comes to our boss, but that's a different thing. We are not a docile people. And if you go to any MBA class, as I have, you'll find that the first guys who finished reading the case study and put up their hand to comment on how stupid the CEO was are the Indian guys there. I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm only pointing out a behavioral aspect. Why do I mention? If you don't believe me, just go and watch the TV news anchor. you'll find that Indians will speak simultaneously. They'll talk across each other. These are not habits I'm asking you to follow. I'm merely stating the reality. That's all. I'm neither criticizing it, nor am I eulogizing it. But this is part of the tradition. It's part of the culture. Grew up. I realized this when I went to the UK for the first time. And I found in every meeting, they spoke one after the other. It was rude to cross-talk. And every meeting ended with somebody saying, so we have agreed the 3 W's. Who will do what, when? Many Indian meetings don't end with 3 W's. They just end. And many people walk out with different impressions of what the W's are. Why have I taken so much time, last 10 minutes, to speak about this? This is not to say Indian culture is better or worse, or Indian tradition is better or worse, but to merely point out that if you've grown up here, you take these things for granted. And when you go and see it from outside, you say there are other people who do it differently. And the essence of it is that culture is where the roots of our innovation and leadership spring. And therefore it is different. And I'm not here to praise that, therefore this is fantastic. It's not. It may be, it may not be, it depends on the circumstance. I would like to, in line with the theme of innovation and leadership, talk a little bit about some myths and realities about innovation, which come out of this understanding of the roots being in your own culture. You know, if you read, as I have read, a reasonable amount of literature about innovation, the first thing that you read very often is that as you age, you lose innovative power. That's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. My IIT batchmate, Dr. Ranjan Bose, who's now a Regents Chair Professor in the United States, he pointed out to me when I was writing my book on innovation that age is not an impediment to new learning, but motivation and determination are an impediment. And he used to give the example of a person called Dr. John Goodenough. Now that's an unusual name. But he said, you watch in the next few years, this man is going to get a Nobel Prize. And at the age of 97, John Goodenough got the Nobel Prize for chemistry, which is 2019, 3 years ago. Now, that's an exception. Most of us at 97 will suffer from dementia, unfortunately. But I'm merely pointing out that we should not be sucked into the mythology that age prevents you from being creative. The second mythology that we must be careful is you must be first in the market, first in the race, otherwise your innovation is of no use. The reality is that if you want to win, and ultimately every innovation seeks to win in the market, the innovator needs to be sustainably first, because the relay race is much longer. If you're the first in the market, I'll give you an example. Today, if I ask people globally who brought an innovation of, ladies' sanitary wear to sanitary pads to the market, most people would say Procter & Gamble, Pampers. The fact is, long before Procter & Gamble, a company had marketed Chucks, CHUX. Those who live in the US might be familiar with this. Chucks is the first. Who is the first detergent in the Indian market? Surf? Rin of Hindustan Lever? No. Swastik Oil Mills, which doesn't exist anymore, and Tomco, which will have a product called Magic and Bonus for those who are old enough to remember. Is the person who comes first and who stays first is the one who wins. And so that's the second myth I just wanted to touch upon. The third is that there's a mythology that creativity is more important than discipline. Let's have an effulgence of ideas. After all, only one out of 10 will survive. It is true that only 1 or 2 out of 10 survive. But creativity without discipline is about as useless or useful as discipline without creativity. This is very important. You know, if I ask anybody who invented the heavier than air flying machine? Most people would say the Wright brothers. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever it is. But you find that the Rig Veda has referred to heavier than a flying machine long ago. It's called the mechanical bird. Why Rig Veda? You don't have to be scholarly to look at the Rig Veda. Look at Valmiki's Ramayana. He talks of Pushpaka Vimana, heavier than air flying machine. So the idea can come to you, and people want to be rewarded for ideas. I did it first. I thought of it. Leonardo da Vinci in 400 years ago, 500 years ago, he used to cut birds' wings and put them together, and he left his sketches, which is lying in the museum. But it's lying in the museum. The guy who actually made it and got it to run and gave birth to the aviation industry were the Wright brothers. So an idea is no big deal. But very often in academics or in companies, people are obsessed that it is my idea. That is. Now, I want to touch upon, since we've described innovation already as a sort of a hoary subject, it is very dependent on context. Without context, it is very difficult to interpret innovation. And I want to give you 4 examples which by any standard in India are path-breaking innovations. But go anywhere else, it may or may not be regarded that way. They may not even know about it. Example number 1. Shankar Netralaya has learned how to bring down the cost of eye operations to 1/10 of the rates that were prevalent before the Shankar Netralaya model. We all know this. I mean, this is very well documented. It is truly path-breaking. If you go to Tamil Nadu and see what they have done, it is just unbelievable. Narayana Hridayalaya, Devi Shetty. We all know that he has reduced the cost of a heart operation to 1/10 of what it costs elsewhere. But who has heard of Narayana Hridayalaya elsewhere? But there is no doubt at all that it is a path-breaking innovation. Cipla, which is a pharmaceutical company, Bombay-based, Yusuf Hamid, when AIDS became a big issue 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and the Africans couldn't afford it, he said, what's so great about this? I mean, he was advised by a scientist, obviously, and he has written very well about how he backed a scientist in his own laboratory to create medicines. And he said, I want to give this to the world's poor people without a patent, without intellectual property, and at 1/10 the price that they can afford, at a price that they can afford, which is 1/10 the price. Cipla's, even in India, I don't know how many people celebrate unless you're a patient of AIDS, but it's a path-breaking innovation. I'll give you one more that's going on right now. Even you may not be aware of it. In the whole technology, biotechnology is a relatively new area. Biocon has already got registered in the United States and is ready to market a diabetes treatment for 1/10 the treatment cost that is today prevalent in the United States. It is a breakthrough innovation for America. When it becomes mature, obviously it won't happen next year. And to think of all this, that it took an Indian management academic. His name is very celebrated now, Coimbatore Krishna Rao Prahlad, C.K. Prahlad. And it took a guy like him to figure out that there is something called the bottom of the pyramid. Only an Indian can think of bottom of the pyramid because everybody else is thinking of the top of the pyramid, right? Now, does that make Indians special? No. If you see, and I've got a number of such cases, I've given you 4 or 5, is there something common? Is there a pattern in this innovation and this leadership of innovation? I found there are 4 which are worth mentioning. First, there's a strong influence of cultural moorings that believe that Western solutions are great, but they are rational and left-brained, with inadequate emphasis on the right-brained aspects. Indian thinking, traditional forms of thinking, advocate holistic approaches. You look at yoga, you look at Ayurveda, you look at meditation. These are left brain, right brain, whichever brain, brainless, whatever you want to call it, but they are holistic, that's for sure. And that's a very different way of looking at uh, 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 medical treatment. The second reason that's common amongst all of these is there's an entrepreneurial recognition, a restlessness, which I call an entrepreneurial recognition, that the existing solution is too expensive for target people to afford. Hence, there's a need for a frugal solution. And they want it to be effective without bells and whistles. And then that becomes his abiding passion. Amit Patra referred in the beginning that people don't want to give up. That's an abiding passion. But that passion must be sprung out of something that you feel very strongly. And all of these examples and many others are illustrated, and many, many others. I'm only mentioning 3 or 4. I'm sure in IIT Kharagpur itself, there are many. Third, there is a deep belief that the rewards of innovation must and can help affected people. Such a pursuit has a spiritual overtone. I don't want to make too much out of this. I don't want to give the impression that every Indian is walking around with saffron robes or with tikka on his forehead. But I think the attachment to spiritual values is quite high. I will not compare it with other countries, but I will say in India, it is an important driver. Otherwise, you will not find people doing Bhumi Puja for their new factory. Where else in the world will you find this? People installing some symbol of God in the people postponing the inauguration of a factory in order to fit to the Panchang. All these show either you're mad or you have some spiritual orientation. You can choose which one you want. But I'm saying it is very different. That's all I'm saying. And the last point I want to say, the idea of innovation is eulogized in the media to be big bets. Steve Jobs, he thought where nobody else went. Google, Elon Musk, those are the heroes, big bets. People who didn't have any money, but they produced $600 billion to do something, send man to the moon. That's one way to innovate, and a great piece of innovation they're doing. But our cultural roots say that requires serendipity, luck, and genius, and enough money. We take a realistic approach here. You take a series of small bets. Since, scaling up the innovation, because once you have an innovation, you have to be able to scale it up to not in thousands, but millions, if not billions. This cycle of experiment, make mistakes, correct, try again, is what drives the Indian way of thinking. There are exceptions. This whole COVID matter was dealt with in the public domain. We said, start small, make a few mistakes. Politics doesn't allow you to make mistakes, but that's not the subject of our discussion. Look at this Aadhaar, no, not Aadhaar, what do you call it? Well, take Aadhaar itself. You take Arogya Setu. Mistakes, let people criticize, and then you start to move ahead. I think these characteristics of the Indian mindset, which are not universal but are widely visible, are important parts of combining the best of Western discipline. And I think we Indians can do a lot better for discipline. We are not so disciplined. We must be ready to admit that, otherwise you're not going to. So once you got an innovation, you have to be disciplined about the way you go about proving it and making sure that it's scalable, etc. But what do we do? And I want to touch upon this Jugaad issue. We've become very Some people are very fascinated with Jugaad. And they almost make a virtue out of it. That this is an Indian rope trick. I think that's a bit detrimental. You see, if you look at our lives in India, it's improving. But if you go back to when Partha and I were in IIT in those days, you know, we encounter obstacles at a scale and frequency which nobody else in the world encounters. To find a hospital to be born in, to get a birth certificate, to get school admission, to get into IIT. I don't know. It's one out of how many 100,000 or 800,000 or some huge number. Finding a job. The officer in State Bank is one out of 800,000. Where will you find this intensity of competition? I'm not making a virtue out of it. I'm just describing a reality. You then complete your career and then you have to cremate, you have to get an Aadhaar card. In the Bombay crematorium, they ask for the Aadhaar card of the person who's gone. And I don't know what will happen if you can't produce that Aadhaar card. Now, we are not the only society with Jugaad. Because when you're faced with too many obstacles, you do Jugaad, quick shortcuts. And Indians are very good at it. But so are the Chinese. They just give it a different name, Chabudo. And in Brazil, they call it Giambara in Portuguese. So Jugaad may be an expedient solution to frequently occurring problems. But to portray it as a great Indian tradition and speaking to the Indian genius is a bit counterproductive in my humble opinion. Other people also follow Jugaad. When Thumba, Indian space, ISRO had to launch their rocket, they took it on the back of a bicycle. There's a very celebrated picture of this. And my batchmate, Ved Prakash Sandlas, who joined ISRO, would often talk about it. That people took the rocket on the back of a bicycle because there was no road through the paddy fields near Trivandrum. So you put it on the back of a bicycle and the guy pulled his mundu, his dhoti up, and is taking the thing to the launch pad. Why? When Apollo 13 went up and they found that carbon monoxide was leaking into the chamber, what did they do? They must have had one Joginder Singh somewhere in NASA at that time. He said, put all the components that we have onto a table. And he said, here are the components. Tell us how to stop the leak. And he said, take this hose pipe, do this, do this, do this. And they gave instructions and the leak was stopped and the Apollo 13 came back safe. I mean, the mission was about it, but the crew was safe. And therefore, I'm mentioning these examples because for us, it's 10 o'clock in the evening, those morning for people there, to merely illustrate and embellish the point that there are cultural roots, social roots, and psychological roots to innovation and leadership. And I've given you some manifestations, not to make a virtue out of it, I repeat, but to point out that that is so. So in 2005, I'm going to close in the next 5-6 minutes, Jetli, so that you can go through questions. Is that all right? Then I'll be within my time. Yeah. I just want to make a mention that around 2005, Ratan Tata called me to his room and he said, I want you to work and lead a team of multi-company team of Tata companies to advise companies on how to change the culture of innovation, not the process of innovation. There are lots of books on process of innovation, that's right. And Jetli is holding up my book, A Biography of Innovation. And one of the byproducts of my chairmanship of the Tata Group Innovation Forum is that book that Jetli is holding up. And I learned a lot about innovation and leadership. Some of the insights I've shared with you. Why do I mention this? Because I came to the view, all challengeable, that innovation is seen as a linear process by many authors. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, what decisions have to be taken. It's like a funnel from wide end to the narrow end. But I didn't see it that way. After I visited MIT, I visited Harvard, I visited Stanford, I visited Imperial College, I went to many companies, I went to DuPont, There are a number of companies. There's no need for me to go through the whole lot. And I came to the view that innovation is more like a biological process. This funnel is a very engineering orientation, physics orientation, straight line, things move, there are gates. You see, an idea is like a fetus, except instead of being in the womb, it's in your head. So when Valmiki thought of Pushpaka Vimana, it was a fetus in the head, happened to be in his head. It's called an idea. Then he delivers the idea. When he's able to sketch or write a poetry about it, he can manifest it to somebody else. That I call the maternity ward. Then you see a baby with face, legs, hands. The baby is quite helpless. It's quite useless. Useless from a functional point of view. And then it goes through infancy, childhood. I've described all that in the book. Adulthood, and then it also gets to maturity and old age. And if you look at this biological process, you do understand that there is a life cycle, there's a time period. And all the stuff about getting the idea and change the world in 3 years' time is not from fetus to old man. I'll give you I'll give you only one example, but I'll mention 2 or 3 others because of the interest of time. We take the ball pen for granted today. I've asked many people, is the ball pen an innovation? They say, what's so great about it? Because, every innovation ceases to be an innovation after it's in wide usage. So it's not surprising. Nobody thinks of the ball pen as an innovation. The first patent for a ball pen was given in 1888. But the first time the ball pen became commercially available was 1938, when the Second World War was beginning and the Royal Air Force placed an order for 30,000 ball pens, all because they wanted British RAF pilots not to smudge their pockets with ink. They could have just sent him with a pencil, but I don't know why they didn't think of that. The same thing is true of the roller suitcase. Today, none of us would step out to the airport without a roller suitcase. But when I began my career, and those of us we went to the airport carrying a suitcase. Sometimes you would buy one of those trolleys. Then you'll have a trolley to carry on which you'll put the suitcase, and then you tie up both and take it. But roller suitcase became, after getting this first patents 70 years ago, it became a common product in 70 years. The point I'm making, and by the way, that innovation leads to other innovations. For example, the computer mouse is based on the same principle as the ball pen. Who could have thought that a patent given in 1888, which made a ball pen, which took 40 years, 50 years to come to maturity, will then produce a computer mouse and give it a much longer life? The deodorant. I worked in Unilever, so I was very interested in deodorants. The roll-on deodorant is on the same principle of the ball pen. You have to understand the rheology of the material, the gap that you're providing between the roller and the circumference. It should be finely machined, etc., etc. So I think innovation is about something becoming effective, whereas we are trained in our brain to think of things that are efficient. There's a big difference between efficiency and effectiveness. We tend to equate the two. I mean, you think of how water comes down a mountain slope. Does it come in a straight line? Does it follow the laws of geometry? Why? It has to go around the obstacle. How does blood flow in your veins? In a straight line? You think it's a pipe in which the red blood is going? No, it's in waves. So if you hear the ECG being taken, and your heartbeats will go boom, 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 because it's coming like the waves out of the ocean. And therefore, I think the way to think about innovation, and a very Indian way of thinking, I think, is to think of the biology metaphor, and which is why I wrote that book, because I got the inspiration by visiting various places and looking at various schools of thought. I would like to close with one last example, and that is when I was posted in Saudi Arabia, I was trained in India to always go to the marketplace, be where your men are, sort of thing, And I found that 70% of the sales of Lipton tea bags was going through what they call hot tea shops. Now, hot tea shop is one that men come to in Saudi Arabia. Men come to, women don't come there. And they have their morning cup of tea or any time in the day. So the guy takes a handi, he throws 10 tea bags into it, and people come and he keeps opening it and giving them their chai. I was very interested. Why does a hot tea shop exist at all? What do they do there? Was it to drink tea? I found the same thing in India. You go today to UP and Bihar, you'll find men going out in the morning to drink tea. And then I stumbled on it. That traditionally, you did not have a gas stove in the house in a typical lower middle class home. You had to light up your kerosene stove if you wanted to fire. How will you get hot water? Much easier to walk around, pay 25 paise or 1 rupee or 2 reals or whatever, have a cup of tea. And you also get socialization. You meet other people. It's like a bar, except there's no alcohol. And so the very great importance of a coffee shop came through to me. When I came to Brookbond, India, we set up a hot tea shop operation. It accounted for 30% of the sales of my tea at that time. I don't know what it is now. So there are discontinuities which come out of innovation that looks at cultural roots. And I just wanted to touch upon this. And the coffee shop, you know, when I was a young student in Calcutta, College Street, that India Coffee House was a great adda place. Everybody went to India Coffee House. I don't know if it still exists or whether people go there. But you look at the world's greatest coffee shops, Jean-Paul Sartre went there, and you know, many intellectuals. Socialization is a very important part, and Indians require that socialization. So let me close by saying I'm not eulogizing Western methods or Indian methods. I'm merely stating there are differences. The second thing I'm mentioning is that the best innovation you'll get is by imbibing the qualities of discipline from the Western methods and combining it with the creative, intuitive methods of the Indian methods. And the third is that if you can carry culture with you, it can eat strategy to your advantage. Let me stop there. Thank you very much for listening to me. It's very late in the night here, but hopefully there'll be just a few questions and then you can go to sleep. Thank you, IIT, for calling me, and Partha also.
Thank you, Gopal. So nice of you. You have covered the subject so beautifully. You kept us all totally attentive to you, what you were saying. And here are a few questions. One of them is, this is from Larry Kaufman. What are the most important decisions that the CEO of a large Indian company can do to foster innovation in his company?
Do you want me to answer it?
Yes, sir.
That's exactly the charge that I addressed in Tata's. And I can write about it a lot, but I'll just mention one or two things. One of the cultural inhibitions we felt was everywhere in the world, people were scared to innovate lest they fail. It is not an Indian specialty. People think in India we are this. It's exactly the same everywhere else.
Everywhere.
And I said, but Indians may be feeling a little more diffident about failure. I then stumbled upon an experiment done in the Volkswagen factory in Germany, where they said, if you fail, we'll reward you, if it's an honest failure. Yeah. So I started a scheme in Tata's called Dare to Try. And it's in the book I've written about Dare to Try, where we said if it's a genuine mistake, then we defined 3 types of mistakes. One is a genuine judgmental mistake, one is carelessness, and one is bad motive, bad niti. The last 2 we will not tolerate, but the first one we will accept. And in the first year, we got 12 entries, mostly from abroad, by the way, from England or somewhere else. But by the time I retired, I think we got 280 entries. And I'm told nowadays you get 700 entries. People who are saying, I tried this honestly and it failed. And what did I learn from it? So that's one example. The second thing is but in collaboration with the London Business School, we created an instrument called an Innometer to find out how at a departmental level So you can pit the production department, engineering department, finance department, HR department. Do they have an atmosphere of encouraging innovation? And each one got a score, 3.2, 3.7, 4 point.
Great, sir.
Wanted to know how the other guys got 3.7, and it created a certain energy. So I've just given you 2 examples.
Great, sir. Next question from Arpit Chaudhary. Is innovation also a process of leading complex processes to more simplification, which applies to vast diversity?
Say that again, I didn't understand.
Is innovation also a process of leading complex processes to more simplification?
Of course. I don't know if everybody will recognize that, but innovation is not about making simple things complex, but making complex things simple. So
Correct.
I think the answer is yes.
And it could be for the products as well as processes, as well as services also. Kishore Singh is asking, sir, you are a good orator.
He makes complex things simple for his people.
Yes, sir.
Now
Now
you may
Kishore Singh
consider
is
that.
asking you, Kishore,
Yeah.
sir, you are a good orator. You are an asset for the nation. But sorry to ask you this rude question, that how you measure the impact of your talk over the listeners. Is there any mechanism to track and visualize positive transformation among the participants?
Is there a what?
Is there any mechanism to track and visualize positive transformation among the participants?
I don't know the answer to that question.
The very fact people are asking questions, that means that it is very impactful. I'll put it that way.
Right. But it's a good question for you to act upon. For the future ones, you may get some feedback form or something like that, you know,
Correct,
like you do for classroom teaching. Yeah.
Yes. Then Professor S.K. Palhan, he has asked, entrepreneurs do not compete.
Yes, sir.
What is your take on that?
He's asked what?
Entrepreneurs do not compete. What is your view about that?
I'm not sure I understand that question though.
Entrepreneurs.
I understand the words, but I don't know what's the question. What do you mean by entrepreneurs do not compete? They do compete.
They do compete. Okay, fine. Next question is from Indranil Basu. India is a significant contributor to software services globally. But so far, as globally successful innovative algorithms or software products are concerned, India doesn't figure in the rankings. Many Indians have produced excellent innovative ideas in the West, especially in the USA. Can you explain why this dichotomy?
I think that's a question best answered by the IITs, Institutes of Technology, because it is true that many Indians are not able to produce great research here. They do so there. Many managers do not produce great results here, but they produce great results there. And that's a separate subject. If you don't mind, I will not go into that at this late hour. But I thank you for a very valid question.
Yeah. Jerry Brightman is saying, you mentioned many words that link to innovation, all of which I agree with. One word that I thought was missing is joy. Any thoughts?
Maybe you're right. After all, your name is Brightman, so you produced a very bright angle to it. Thank you. That's
then
fair.
Jia is asking, I was raised in India and have been living in USA, New Jersey, New York for past 24 years. How can I collaborate with India to drive innovation? This way I can help the current youth in US and India. With the digital hyper-connected world, this should be possible according to me. And she's asking your advice.
Well, I'm certainly not the guy who can help you, but I would hope that IIT Kharagpur could perhaps consider whether this could be within their remit, whether it's in PGAL or somewhere else, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would encourage you to contact Professor Partha to explore this.
And of course, there are many chat they are thanking you. That's a different number of them. So I'm not reading that.
Okay.
So another question is, Sameer, are the current crop of startups in our country examples of innovation? Is every startup an innovation?
I have to disappoint you if you think I'm going to say yes. Most startups are not great innovations.
Correct.
They have taken venture capitalists' ideas from Silicon Valley and they've implemented very good software. They're the truly innovative, at least this is my opinion, since you asked, I can only share that.
Great.
Right? I think
Now,
true innovation comes out of a commitment to understanding customer needs, to finding out gaps, to creating technologies which are unique there. And maybe many of our startups don't quite qualify there.
great. There's a big group of alumni here from IIT Kharagpur. So Siddharth is asking, as the alumni group, how we can encourage innovation and leadership among our alumni.
Well, I don't know whether I'm competent to give advice to my fellow alumni, but let me say this, what I have been doing, I can only describe that. I have tried to develop my own ideas based on my experience, and I share it with people who come and make the mistake of asking me to share it, like you have this evening, in the hope that maybe some fetus will generate in somebody else's mind, and maybe it will come to maturity. Because I think all that alumni can do, the alumni are not necessarily the most innovative guys, just because they're alumni.
Correct.
But alumni have experience, and that experience and a different cultural orientation, depending on where they've grown up, could help to plant new ideas. You know, there are two viruses in this world which we are scared of. One is coronavirus. But you know, a virus has no life of its own. It's dead. A coronavirus can do nothing on its own. It has to have a host body on which to multiply and mutate and all that stuff. Ideas are also viruses. They have no life of their own. They have to mutate and transform as it goes. So if you can be the sprinkler through which ideas are going, many of them will be wasted. That's all right. Like I'm trying today.
Yeah. So with that, I think we come to the end of the question answer session. May I request now Parthoda to just summarize the whole session, please? Dear Partho.
Yeah. Jaitlji, thank you very much. Thank you, Gopal. As expected, you exceeded any expectations one could have had about this session. So thank you. I think to summarize everything that was discussed and that questions were raised, I think 5 points crystallize out very beautifully. And I want to bring out those 5 points, which fortunately serves the basic purpose of the Leadership Academy. The first point that you rightly said, Gopal, that it is not one versus the other. East has got his own approaches towards life. West has got his own approaches towards life, towards music. And we have to take the best of both. And how do you integrate the best of both depends upon the situation. We do not have to mechanically integrate. It has to be a biological process. That's a very important point, because we tend to be very mechanistic about it. We have to be biological about it. Point one. Point two, which is very dear to my heart, is that innovation sometimes is because of big bets, sometimes because of small bets. But when I look at the lives of, in India, Prafulla Chandra Ray, PC Ray, in US, Thomas Edison, these were all beginning with small bets. But with small bets, the key is how to explore these possibilities and follow a life cycle process, which is a very powerful point you made, that it is like giving a birth to a child in the womb and helping the process through till maturity. And I think we do not often do a good job. Even when I serve my clients here in the United States or Europe, very few companies manage that process. So perhaps Leadership Academy could work on it, Professor Varshney, to see how to develop that point. That was the second point of takeaway. The third point is also very dear to me when you talked about orchestra. I have been noticing that, when I go to Japan, Japanese kabuki theaters, the orchestras in Vienna, in Munich, in New York, opera houses in Boston, versus when I go to Rabindra Sadan in Kolkata, I see a difference. Now, instead of feeling bad about it or positive about it, the challenge is that how to manage the discipline of chaos, if we love chaos, and so that there is enough room for flexibility. Because if you are too disciplined, you lose the flexibility. If you are too flexible, you lose the efficiency. So I think we need a combination of both. And that's where I feel both in the West as well as in the East, there has to be a lot of experimentation. Because I think particularly when I look at Japan, it's too disciplined. And now Japan is paying for it. As you know, there have been 3 decades of flatness because Japan has not been able to move into the innovation society. So that's the third point, which I think you may beautifully articulated, the concept of orchestra. The fourth point, which is more specific to IIT Kharagpur, or maybe India, that given the nature of challenges that you have articulated and the nature of problems that we are facing in the country, particularly when you talked about the startups, I think there's a need to cultivate in our students the confidence of disobedience so that you could unlock the freedom of thinking. I think if we are too obedient all the time in the classroom, do not challenge the professor, by the time you have gone through that process for 4 or 5 years, when you join a company, you have become a yes sir, no sir man. We have to break that. And that's where, Amit, I would love to work at. That's why Leadership Academy could play a very important role to bring the new culture, which Gopal repeatedly talked about. And the final point, or the fifth point, which is, again, dear to me, which Commander and I discussed many times, leadership is not about commanding. Leadership is not about ordering. Leadership is about influencing. It is about serving. And I think we have to make it very clear when we start talking about, Amit, you raised a very important point, that what is leadership? I think it is about serving, being selfless, determined, innovative. So I think that is the other point, Gopal, you brought out, including the questions that I read. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for Gopal sharing your wisdom through the years. And I'm sure this is just a start. As the Commander believes that, and I think the Academy believes that Leadership Academy lectures should continue. Now, that's a very big commitment because every 30 days we have to find such great leaders. But after Gopal, it will be very difficult to find someone who could match Gopal's standards of excellence. But with help of Gopal, we will find someone. I think Puran wants to share a few words.
Virendra, I want to take 1 minute. Virendra,
Sir,
I have 1 minute. Okay.
please, sir.
So it was such an illuminating speech by Gopalji. I learned a lot. My hats off to him that how much this man from IIT Kharagpur has contributed in various thoughts, in innovation, in business, in science. So my salute to him. Secondly, while I was listening to him, my mind also went to some of these things. And I'll say, Sir C.V. Raman, he was in Kolkata University doing the experiment on light. It was just a flask of water. He and K.S. Krishnan, who later became chairman of NPL in Delhi, they were doing the experiment. And suddenly, Krishnan came running to C.V. Raman, found it. Just a ray of light and the Raman effect was born all over the world. Sometime a small experiment, of course, after a lot of labor, they created Raman effect. Ramanujam, at such a young age, Professor Hardy was giving a lecture in Madras and he was listening and he posed 1 or 2 questions like you posed for Gopal, and Hardy told the MC, bring him in. And he told him, I want to take you to England. And you know what happened? He died at the age of 32. And they say the equations that Ramanujan wrote, nobody has been able to interpret, not even Einstein. Thirdly, I say Pushpiman. Gopal mentioned Pushpiman. I agree with him that at that time, the technology was there. And also, the Kaurva's father, he was blind, but he somehow saw the battle in Kurukshetra. There was something like television, I don't know. But then I think the wheel of the cart, Gopalji, you will correct me. Was it in India, wheel of the cart? The wheel, was it invented in India?
I don't know.
You don't know, but I think it was. And I think of all the innovations you mentioned, whether Wright brothers or other Einstein or Newton, but I think that was a stroke of a genius. So I just wanted to thank you for a little bit giving an acceleration to my mind and thinking all these things. But your wisdom, I salute you. I really salute you. Thank you very much. Music, one word. I am chairman of MIT Arts and Music, MIT, and we hold a lot of concerts and everything. And what Gopal said, that 3-4 people of the Indian classical music and in the West, 100 people in the orchestra. Absolutely correct. But I respect his final thought that both have to, and Partho's thought, both have to join and take the best from each other and combine the two to get the best in the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's
Thank
give
you.
a big hand to Gopal
Thank
before we
you.
formally give the vote of thanks.
Thank
Great.
you very much, Partho and IIT Kharagpur.
Thank you very much, sir.
Grateful.
Thank you. Many thanks, sir.
Thank you, Commander sir. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
I am very pleased to give vote of thanks as a vice chairman of Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership. All of us at IIT Kharagpur and people associated with the academy have a great opportunity to listen you, sir, today. We are very thankful to you for gracing this occasion, especially on the day when we celebrate our Science Day in India. And you have rightly connected the thoughts that innovation and disciplines are the mirror image of each other. If one exists, other will come. Otherwise, things will not come into picture. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the people who are associated with this one. Our director, Professor V.K. Tiwari, our deputy director, Professor Amit Patra, and other people associated with the academy. And last but not least, all the participants from all over the globe for joining this event. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night, sir. Good night.
Good
sir.
night.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you. Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
sir.
All the best. Yeah.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
night.
Bye.